You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
So happy to have you with me here today on this Wellness and Weight Loss Wednesday, where we're going to be going through the stress part of the de-stress protocol based on Ayurvedic medicine and Ayurvedic teachings. We've had so much fun over the past few weeks, starting with episode 900, once a week going through the Ayurvedic doshas and Ayurvedic body types. After we went through that, after we helped you to discover whether you're predominantly Vata or Pitta or Kapha and how that relates now to the ectomorph, mesomorph, and endomorph, and which one of the 10 subtypes you are of the doshas, now we began to move on to the right type of diet for each body type, the right type of exercise program, and today we're going over the stress, right? Because we know that each person experiences stress in a little different type of way. And although stress in general is more of a Vata-based disturbance or disorder, each body type handles it in its own way. So, for example, when the Vata dosha, the Vata body type, is more stressed, they're going to be more prone to anxiety, feeling overwhelmed. They're going to worry. They're going to start grinding their teeth, losing sleep at night. They're going to become more constipated. They may even lose weight without trying. And they're going to be more, what we call in our society, more ADD or more distracted, right? So that's a really great sign that you're suffering from an Vata-based stress imbalance. Now, these things, the anxiety, the worry, the sometimes constipation or insomnia at night, you could be any body type and experience these things. And that's because Vata can be stress. Because remember, Vata means movement. Vata means space, ether, air, and it basically means being ungrounded. All of us in our Western-based mentality and Western-based culture, so that's why, when you're on vacation, you're no longer in that Western-based mentality. That Vata stuff starts to calm, and we're going to talk about that. But when you are in a go, Western-based culture, you become ungrounded. And you're more prone to these Vata-based disturbances, which is also, though, why I am teaching you that your body type is not your current mental state. And that's what a lot of people are doing incorrectly as they're teaching Ayurvedic medicine. So what they then do is they'll have you follow a Vata-based diet. But the problem is that Vata-based diet does not work for endomorphs. Or the Kapha body type, or the Pitta Kapha body type. They start to gain weight and they get even more anxious. They get even more upset and they can't figure it out. So in truth, what we need to do is work on the Ayurvedic mindset, the Ayurvedic lifestyle, which balances stress much better than just the diet alone. Now, warming foods, all of those things are great, but they still have to be based on the diet foods that I explained just a couple episodes again as well. And if you're looking for more details, simply go to stephencabral.com/podcasts. And every week for the past, let's say 6 weeks since episode 900, I've been going through once a week on Ayurvedic-based practices. And you can simply go to stephencabral.com/podcasts and type in Ayurveda, and you'll find all those different podcasts as well. In the future, we'll have its own separate podcast that will just link up to all the Ayurvedic shows. We'll do that in the future for you, since I know a lot of people are looking for that. So we're happy to do that in the future. All of these things just take a little time. So what I want to do now, though, is I want to share with you, I just said the Vata is more prone to the anxiety and feeling overwhelmed and grinding their teeth and losing weight without trying and worrying and not being able to fall asleep at night or waking up throughout the night and being constipated, all of those things, right? That's how a Vata experiences it. But a Pitta may experience stress as this: anger, aggression. They might get headaches or migraines. They might get ulcers. They might get skin rashes or feel like burning of the skin. And they might be more prone to criticizing others or lashing out. That's how a pitta might experience not experience stress, but actually act in terms of stress, right? So when they're stressed, they're acting more of an aggressive-based way. And for the kapha body type, more of that endomorph body type, what happens with them is they can start to draw away. They can be more possessive, or they can start to get really lower mood or depressed, right? More seasonal affective disorder, all of those things as well. They might start to overeat, comfort themselves in terms of stress, because they can be much more emotional eaters than any other body type or dosha. They can be very resistant to changing their life in order to do the things that they know they need to do. They know they need to do them, but they can be resistant to doing those things in order to remove the stresses in their life. They can be very, very stubborn and overall just slower to change. Now, all of these body types, you saw the aggressiveness with the pitta, the slowness or the stubbornness of the kapha, or the anxiety of the vata. All these body types, all these doshas experience stress, but the way in which they react is different. Remember, we've spoken about this before, and it goes with everything in life. For example, a lot of starches, such as maybe rice or sweet potatoes or yams or any of these things, or fruit, when we eat them, they can be really good foods for everyone. Well, the vata thrives on them. They're not going to gain all the weight. But the kapha, they eat too much of that, and if it's not balanced by output, well, then they're going to start to gain more weight. So again, that's how we have to look at it, is that all of these things in life, they happen to all of us. Our bodies can react differently to them. So do keep in mind that everyone needs a foundational-based program, but then you can custom tailor it for yourself, just based usually on quantity or what really works for you. And I explained that last week in the exercise protocols as well. We all need exercise. We all need resistance exercise. We all need some cardio, but that cardio could be different. It could be intervals, could be longer distance endurance, or could just be walking. So you have to look into all of these different things and the current state that you're at, which can oftentimes be different than your actual genetic state. So we always work on the current state first, the Vikriti, versus your genetics, which is the Prakriti, that you want to balance for the long term. So what I want to talk about today in terms of the overall Vata-based imbalance, or I should say the stress-based imbalances in Ayurveda, is that we have to understand that since the beginning of time, we've been told that stress literally precipitates 90% of all dis-ease in the body. And that's before inflammation ever becomes an issue. It's before the hormonal imbalances, the digestive issues, or the weakened immunity. And the reason is this, is that stress leads to a lot of these hormonal imbalances. I've spoken about it before. The low thyroid, the estrogen dominance, all of those are precipitated typically by stress, by higher cortisol, by higher neurotransmitter output, by higher norepinephrine output as well. So when you understand that and you test something like a thyroid adrenal hormone panel, or you test a hair tissue mineral analysis, or both, you can begin to see how it leads to these dis-eases of the body and why they have to be corrected at a stress level. And then, of course, now that you're there, now that you're already hypothyroid, you need to fix that as well. Okay, so that's why I always say work on the underlying root causes, but of course you can't deny the symptoms you have. You have to work on those as well, of course, because you don't want to suffer. The digestive issues, same thing. You can run the organic acids test and look for candida overgrowth and bacterial overgrowth like C. diff. You can look for your vitamin deficiencies, all of those items, right? You can run a stool test and look for H. pylori or parasites or bacterial overgrowth. But even before that, typically, there's stress that weakened the digestive system, that allowed for the gut not to produce maybe as much stomach acid, right? If we don't produce as much hydrochloric acid, well, we're going to allow more of the parasites in. We're going to allow more of the bacteria in. That throws off then our microbiome balance. We get what's called a dysfunctional microbiome or an imbalanced microbiome, right? So dysbiosis of the gut. Same with the immune system. We all talk about autoimmunity, right? But what causes autoimmunity? Well, it's a myriad of different steps before that, meaning it is the stress, it's the imbalanced gut, it's the intestinal permeability, which we know is in 90% of all autoimmune-based issues. It's the hormone imbalance by an overproduction, at least initially, of cortisol, and then oftentimes an imbalance in the immune system between what's called CD4 and CD8 cells and Th1 and Th2 immunity. And this goes very deep, right? Those are surface level things, but it goes deep. So what we have to understand is that stress is something that we can never avoid, but this is so important, it is our response to stress that ultimately decides how it's going to affect us. You can allow stress to really eat away at you, or you can be someone that recognizes the stress, recognizes your physical constitution, how it's affecting you, and then going about rebalancing your body. So a lot of people, they don't look at necessarily what's going on the inside. And that's why I can't obviously recommend functional medicine lab testing enough, because it shows you what's going on at a root level, at a foundational level, using saliva testing, using urine testing, using the hair tissue mineral analysis testing, the stool testing, the blood testing, all of those things. They're all great. And it's going to show you different compartments and different ways in which you look at the body. But we have to understand, this is very, very important, is that our brain, namely the hypothalamus, is getting signals, whether it's from the proprioception that we touch, that we feel in the environment, or the senses, our sight, our smell, any of those things that could trigger danger or stress. It's some response. Remember, stress is different for each one of us. Not everyone perceives events in the same way. Some people see them as good. Some people see them as bad. Some people see it as a challenge or a learning opportunity, and some people see it as something overwhelming that's really coming to get them. And this triggers what's called a hypothalamus pituitary adrenal reaction. It means that the hypothalamus recognizes stress. It tells the pituitary gland to begin to produce certain hormones. I won't get into those today because I don't want to make this overly complicated. I have spoken about it before on how the adrenals affect the thyroid. And so you'll want to check out those previous podcasts as well, just at stephencabral.com/podcast. And so what happens is this. The adrenals then get the signal from the pituitary gland to begin to produce adrenaline or norepinephrine. When this happens, it already starts to speed up the heart rate and we get ready to fight against something or run away, the fight or flight based response. Well, at that time, we get what's called a positive feedback loop. Okay, we're in stress. We need to then produce one more hormone to help out, and that's cortisol. Well, cortisol is going to help increase blood pressure. It's going to release glucose from the liver, so it starts to increase our own blood sugar levels. That's why there's so many people out there that just don't understand this in terms of ketosis and taking in caffeine while they're trying to do low carb and all that. Like, it's just what happens in our society is we really start to see things from just basically a surface level, and then we try to promote it for everyone. And it's always why they're considered fads, because a fad diet or fad exercise or fad whatever is built upon a premise that doesn't go deep enough, that only looks at things on the surface level in the short term. And in the short term, it looks great. On the surface level, it looks great. But it's when you don't examine how it affects the body at a much deeper level that you end up harming people in the long term, as well as, the simple truth is this, is that if you looked at it from a long-term perspective and at a deeper level, you would never recommend these things in all cases for everyone in the first place. It just obviously doesn't make sense. So getting back on track, though, what we have to look at is when cortisol begins to get ramped up, we already know that it begins to downregulate thyroid. It begins to downregulate metabolism. And it does this on purpose. It does this to keep us alive. It's a survival-based mechanism, right? So we start to burn less calories. We start to produce less body heat, like anything thermogenic. Anything that will require energy on our end, it starts to slow that down. Even cognition in certain areas. Now remember, it gives us good tunnel vision to concentrate on whatever we need to as cortisol's high. But what happens is over time, we begin to become burnt out. We literally burn out by this hot hormone, as Ayurveda describes it as cortisol. So, and pittas produce quite a bit of it, right? But they're better able. So the interesting thing about the pitta body type is they're really great under stress, except that they get much more aggressive, and I can absolutely fall into that category, and that's why I've had to work on my self-awareness to a very high level, because I don't want to become too impatient. I don't want to become too aggressive or get outbursts of anger or anything like that. So when I start to see it build up, I say, okay, here it is. Take a deep breath, because it's all about going back to that breath. We'll talk about that in a moment as well. We all have this ramp up of stress inside of ourselves. We do. And it affects us in different ways. Even though my body type is actually predominantly a Vata body type, I don't experience the mindset or the physical reaction of many of those Vata-based disturbances. Now, I did have the insomnia when I was younger. There's no doubt about that. I can lose weight when stressed. That's true. That is true as well. But more of the worrying or anxiety or the constipation or, the teeth grinding, that was never me. I experienced stress as more of the pitta. I experienced more of the aggressiveness and anger and temper and those types of things. Now, that was me. That was me all the way through my early 20s, without a doubt. And then that's why, when they say people can't change, it's just not true. I've seen it in my practice over and over. I don't have any special skills. What I did was I just worked on it. I worked on it by reading hundreds of books on self-awareness. Now, I believe that you don't have to read as many as me. I had that stubbornness, I guess, of the kapha as well, in that, it took me a while to really get it. I had to do a lot of deep work. I also had to change a lot of my programming that I had from childhood. I had to work on all of those things. And as I worked on them, I became more self-aware. I began to catch myself doing those things. And now I can see the stress, I can feel it, and I do something very interesting, at least for me. I allow myself to feel the stress, but I try to feel it from a third party. Try to look at it from the outside. I say, okay, this is not good. What's happening right now is not ideal. This is not a good thing. I wish this was not happening. However, I know it's temporary. I know it will pass. And I know that to this day, I've survived and I've gotten through everything, every trial and every tribulation, every obstacle that I've encountered. I've gotten through it. And I don't know how that I might get through this one, but I will. And just saying that to myself, not having to figure it out, but just saying that to myself, I know that I'll be able to get through it. And that lessens the stress. I also say to myself, you can worry about it today. You can think about it today. You can get angry about it today. But when you wake up tomorrow, you're not going to have those same feelings. You're going to work on resolving the problem tomorrow without having the emotional reaction that you're having today. And that's what I do. Maybe that works for you. Maybe it will work for you. Maybe it won't. But out of the hundreds of books that I've read on self-improvement, that has really been very, very helpful for myself. Because remember, I had the Addison's disease from the real burnout, and I had myalgic encephalomyelitis, the flu-like symptoms from the burnout, the POTS, the burnout of all my sodium, basically the burnout of my electrolytes, right? The lack of aldosterone being produced by my body. I had the low hormones. I had the immune imbalance with rheumatoid arthritis, right? I had type 2 diabetes with blood sugar dysregulation. And I never want to go back to any of those things. I had daily headaches. I had insomnia. So what I'm doing for myself isn't being zen or anything like that. I'm trying to get in that state, but I'm doing it to protect myself. I'm guarding against myself because I know how stress throws off people's immune system. And it literally destroyed mine. I had to rebuild it from the ground up. I had to rebuild it. My gut was dysfunctional. I had SIBO, I had candida overgrowth, I had H. pylori multiple times, and it was a mess. And so I just refused to go back there. So there's very little in life that's going to get me stressed for more than that day. Now, I might not be happy about it, but I'm not going to allow it to hit me at a core level without me actively trying to work on it. Now, what else do I do? Well, again, you have to understand that was me. Like, you might have lupus, you might have alopecia, you might have psoriasis, you might have rheumatoid arthritis, you might have whatever you're dealing with that stress is absolutely affecting. So the key is to look at it as how can we stop stress in its tracks before it continues to break down your body, right? And cause dis-ease in your body. Well, we need to figure out what balances it. And again, Ayurveda has already told us this. We need to do vata mind pacifying activities. Well, what is that? Well, it's doing things like dinner out with friends. It's social events that you enjoy. It's watching a funny movie. It's date nights. It's playing with your kids. It's taking your dog for a walk. It's going for a walk during lunch like I do. It's meditation. It's hatha yoga. It's focused on your breathing. It's 20-minute naps. It's all of the things that help to calm the mind, right? And the mind will then help to calm the body. So it's so essential. I spoke about that in the rain barrel effect. I have a whole module in my upcoming practitioner-based certification coming up and just course for every individual, because just because you go through it doesn't not mean you have to be a practitioner. You can just be an everyday person that wants to learn more about their own health. So, but what we need to do is we need to combat stress. It's honestly, I could say it's the most important thing, but they're all kind of the most important thing. But stress is up there. It doesn't even matter so much what you eat if you're stressed all the time. You have to reduce the stress. It's one of the limiting factors keeping people from getting well. It really is. You can be doing everything right, but if you're stressed, you're not going to get fully well. And that's why because I work with a lot of great doctors and health practitioners, and they're doing a lot of the right things. And I just say to them, listen, you're overworked, you're underslept, you're tired, you're exhausted, you're overwhelmed, you're anxious, you're not putting your body in a state to heal. Now, the only reason you're at worse right now is because you are following a great diet. You are using great supplements. You're doing great things, but you need to get that mind back under control. Now, easier said than done, of course. So we want to do the activities that I just spoke about before, but also, and I'll be talking about more of this in the rest chapter or the rest module and also the rest for Ayurveda. But, here's what I want to look at as well, is that we need to look at everything that we can do. And that includes the foods, the herbs, and the supplements to combat stress. So one of my favorite things to kind of poke fun at is the keto-based diet. And that's because if you go too low carb, and that includes keto, for too long, you're putting yourself in more of a survival-based state. You basically told your body, hey, we don't have enough food. Sure, you have enough fat. Agreed, I understand that. You get a little bit of protein, but you're keeping your carbs under, 50 grams a day, 25 grams a day, and that includes vegetables. How are you going to get all of your phytonutrients, right? If you're not eating some berries, at least for fruit, and some vegetables, you're going to be missing out on a lot of micronutrients that no one ever talks to you about. And you're going to be missing out on carbohydrates. Why do carbs matter? Now, I'm not saying everyone should eat 200 or 300 or 400 grams of carbs a day. Some people might do great with 100, right? But here's the deal. Carbohydrates. I want to explain this. Carbohydrates are the only food that combats stress. Root vegetables, yams, warm, grounding-based foods. Literally, they're grown in the ground, right? They're grounding. Ayurveda taught us this. The same with traditional Chinese medicine. Every form of medicine, except conventional medicine, this helps to what? Produce more dopamine, produce more serotonin, cut cortisol, give our body the glucose that it needs. Glucose is not bad. Diabetes is bad. Too high blood sugar is bad. But glucose isn't bad. Our body's meant to run on glucose for short-term fuel and body fat for long-term fuel. Allow it to do that. Allow it to do what it's supposed to do. Don't think that you, as a human, or any of us as practitioners, are smarter than our own body. We're not. Our body is much, much smarter. We still don't even fully comprehend all of its literally amazing abilities, right? The amazing abilities for it to heal. Don't give it too much sugar, especially if you're an endomorph or kapha or glucose or carbs, but give it enough to be able to boost mood, to be able to cut cortisol, to tell your body it's not starving, that it's not in fight or flight. Remember, you have enough of that in the Western-based mentality. You don't need more of that. And in terms of great herbs, well, I've spoken about it before on previous Friday reviews on the Super Nutrient of the Week. Ashwagandha, right? Passion flower. Amazing herbs that we know help to combat stress. And then using things like rhodiola or ginseng, Siberian ginseng, to help balance energy and stress, because sometimes you do need a little bit of a boost, right? So super important. We use Adrenal Soothe all the time in my practice. Under highest levels of stress, we have people take one in the morning with breakfast, another at lunch, and two at dinner. That's how we're using the Adrenal Soothe for the most part for people that are under high levels of stress. What does it do? Well, it's clinically proven to cut cortisol levels so that you literally don't burn out, that you're able to better recognize stress. Then you can work on the lifestyle things, the mindset, all of those. And then for those people that need a boost, we use the adrenal energy support. But again, before using the adrenal energy support, ask yourself, are you burnt out? Or do you just need a little bit of boost to get through some tough travel time, or to give you a little bit of energy dealing with the holiday season, whatever it might be? And that's a great time to use it. So all of these things are very, very important, because I even like to get people into more of that. I love using deep sleep support, which has a lot of the herbs that I just spoke about. I like using the whole deep sleep protocol for really calming the body down at night. To after 7 o'clock at night, you need to shut it down. You really do. And the reason is that we're meant to be diurnal beings. So when it starts to get dark, shut it down. When it starts to become light, okay, turn it back on. And that gives you typically about 12 hours on and 12 hours off. But in order to heal the body and repair, you actually need more off time. Like you need some downtime during lunch. You need to go for a walk. You need to do those things to calm that sympathetic nervous system. Yeah, I talk about this all the time about the sympathetic nervous system because no one's talking about it. It's literally the missing piece of the puzzle. It is the fight or flight. It is the autonomic nervous system dysregulation towards more of that cortisol and more of the breakdown of the body. And if we recognize this, if we taught it more, then more people would understand how it is both the mind and the body that we need to bring them together in order to heal. So all of those are great. Deep sleep protocol. We talked about the adrenal herbs. We talked about the foods, the calming foods, the vata-based foods that help to pacify vata. Magnesium. Magnesium is another one. Magnesium is one of those minerals that we use all the time in my practice. Again, you can run yours on a hair tissue mineral analysis, easiest, best way to do it in terms of calcium magnesium balance. And we use the full spectrum magnesium. A lot of times we're doing the daily nutritional support for breakfast. We're doing 1 full spectrum magnesium at lunch. We're doing 2 full spectrum magnesium at dinner. And oftentimes we're using magnesium citrate before bed to really get into the body quickly and calm that sympathetic nervous system. The difference with the full spectrum magnesium is it contains super highly absorbable forms of magnesium that work over a greater period of time, not just in quick substance such as the magnesium citrate. So, all of those are helpful. The reason why I love what I practice right now is that I don't have to say any one of them is best, right? I use the Ayurvedic herbs such as ashwagandha. I use the Ayurvedic mindset such as what to do to pacify the body, as in the walking, even the blue zones, right? The social, the community aspect, the time off. I use the Hatha yoga to balance. And then I use the best of orthomolecular medicine as well with things like magnesium. And that includes bioregulatory and functional medicine. Like that's what we're talking about. Bioregulatory being like, how do we regulate the body through terms of the HPA axis and that autonomic nervous system? They're all like so important, right? Functional medicine is being able to do things like the hair tissue mineral analysis, the thyroid adrenal hormone test, or even just the adrenal hormone test, and looking at the organic acids test and all the different ways in which our body functions. So all of these things are tremendously important. If this interests you, I've done many shows before on adrenals and on thyroid and on fight or flight and on stress. So simply go to stevencabral.com/podcasts and you'll be able to see all of those previous podcasts by just using the search bar. That's really all there is to it. Today's episode is 950. 950 is today's show. You can see all of the links. Why don't I do this? I don't always do this, but why don't I do this? I will link up the adrenal soothe there. I'll link up the full spectrum magnesium, the magnesium citrate. I'll link up the deep sleep support, the deep sleep protocol. I'll link up a bunch of the lab tests, and you just use whatever you feel is right for you. Remember, go back to everything that I spoke of in this podcast because it's not all about supplements. It's not all about herbs. It's not all about what foods. It's also about beginning to learn to become self-aware, beginning to learn to calm the mind, beginning to understand that stress will always be there, but it is our response to stress that ultimately decides whether our body's going to go into more of that stressed out state that is truly catabolic, that begins to break our body down and age us at a much faster rate. It's our response to stress that ultimately leads to the aging process and entropy or breaking down of the body. If we understand this, none of us, and that includes me as well, are going to be perfect. But at least we'll be better than we are today. And by doing that, we will then go on to be able to lead healthier, hopefully longer lives as well. If this podcast was helpful, as always, please do feel free to share it with anyone else you believe it could serve. Take care, everyone. Are you ready to heal yourself and then go on to heal others? If so, the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute can help you discover proven functional medicine protocols that blend the best of 7 different healing disciplines from around the world. I personally share with you the exact handouts and protocols I use in my private practice that enable people to get well, lose the weight, and live longer, stronger. I want to pass this information on to the next generation of health coaches, and that is exactly why I created IHP. We are the future of the health coaching industry, and the skills and knowledge you will learn will make you an in-demand certified health coach anywhere in the world. Although we have many medical professionals taking the IHP certifications, no experience is necessary, and half our members have no previous health certifications. At the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute, our motto is a health coach in every home. Our goal is that you take this knowledge and then share it with family, friends, loved ones, your community, or in a practice where you create a career you love and can be proud of. The global IHP community is filled with some of the most kind and caring people in the world, and we can't wait to welcome you into our world soon. For more information or to set up a discovery call with one of our IHP Health Coach graduates, simply head over to integrativehealthpractitioner.org.